Welcome back, once again adventurers, to Let's Play Chaos Child. And in the last episode, Takuru made it with Shinjo's help to the Hikaru building and made it into the theatre, where Wataru Sakuma had brought him 2.5 years prior. But when he got there was nobody there except for one person, which was Serika Onoe. And after a brief exchange of words, Takuru and Serika fought at each other with their powers and their D-swords. But in the end, Takuru was the one who was victorious. Or not, in this case, because first of all, that was a very hollow victory because he was unwittingly already under the mind control powers of Sakuma himself. Unfortunately, as was Serika Onoe. But once he had broken free from the control, Takuru demanded that Sakuma explain why he had done everything up until this point, only for his foster parent to pretty much confirm everything that Serika Onoe had said about him back at the clinic. That he was truly a man devoid of any common sense of humanity and morality. But despite that, Takuru actually managed to fight quite well against Sakuma, who has his own artificial D-sword and Gigalomaniac powers. But Takuru did, for a time, have the upper hand. He'd actually had a plan to use his psychokinetic powers to try and destroy the device while Sakuma was distracted. Unfortunately, Sakuma seemed to realize what Takuru was ultimately trying to do and managed to pretty much beat him to the punch with a quick-fire delusion. A delusion that Miyashiro now finds himself in. My vision suddenly blurred. I felt a cold wind on my cheek and I could see the city in the distance. Yeah, this roof line should look very familiar to you. Where was I? The rooftop of Hekio Academy, where Serika and Kurusu fought. More mind control. I panicked and tried to use my D-sword. It was gone. The D-sword had disappeared. Yeah, we're trapped in a delusion. I concentrated as best I could. I imagined the pale light of the sword. Come on, come on. I couldn't see him or sense him. But Sakuma was probably right in front of me with his huge D-sword. Or he could just be standing off on the side, giggling like a lunatic. I couldn't make my D-sword appear. That's because your particles are being overridden by his. I couldn't see it. I couldn't find it. It was always supposed to appear when I imagined it. Oh no. Sakuma, you piece of shit. Serika was standing there on the roof. And so was...
白々しいわね。あなたなら聞かなくてもわかるんでしょ、セリカ。
Yeah, this is more than just a delusion. It is a memory. It was Nono. Nono was standing in front of me, talking.
生きてたののか
No. Nono is... Nono is...
いや違う
Indeed it isn't. My sense of logic dispelled the hope that was forming in my mind. This was mind control. Sakuma's power was causing me to hallucinate. Yes, indeed. The two of them were right in front of me, but didn't seem to know I was there.
わかっていたんだな、クルスノノ。
As for Takuru in real time, he was on his way to Serika's apartment.
ええ。
Suddenly Serika changed. That smiling, happy girl from the newspaper club disappeared. And in her place, she became a cold, remorseless killer.
やめろ尾上
I knew I was being mind controlled, but couldn't help myself. Because we know how this story ends. I felt a cold chill in my heart, and all the hairs on my body stood up on end. But there is something about this unfortunate turn of events that you don't know about yet, Takuru Miyashiro. But you're probably going to find out about.
Naら、こうなることもわかっていただろう。
Serika's D-sword appeared in her hand. Nono didn't seem surprised. She just glared at Serika. Stop it. Stop it, Serika.
タクルのことも殺すつもり？それはない。あいつのことは私が生かし続ける。それが私の存在理由だ。信じられないわ。だから私はあなたを止める。この命を使ってでも。そう言うと思った。だからお前は邪魔なんだ。
やめろ
Also, Takuru not going to comment on the fact that Nono Kurusu has a D-sword of her own? I screamed as Serika stepped forward, but there was no sign that she heard me. I tried to summon my D-sword, but it didn't work. I tried to get between the two of them. And I realized I couldn't move. My legs felt like they were frozen to the ground.
どうしてどうして
But my head was clear. I couldn't let this happen. I knew I had to stop it, but this event has already happened. It is a delusion, a memory. Serika and Nono's D-swords slammed into each other. There was a flash so bright I was forced to close my eyes. and Nono's D-sword cracked.
見込み違いだったな。お前の思考は丸見えだ。まだ私に友情を期待しているとはな。
Serika kept going forward. There was no hesitation on her face.
やめろ！やめろ！
No matter how much I screamed, they didn't hear me. I couldn't move. Serika crossed right in front of me, carrying her gigantic, deadly weapon.
私の中に友情など存在しない。
And in the next move,
タクル、ごめんね。
it felt like Nono had looked at me. And then Serika's D-sword ran her through. Oh dear. And suddenly I was seeing something else. I felt a cold wind on my cheek, and I could see the city in the distance. I could hear a sob. I'd been crying without realizing it. I looked around, forgetting to even wipe the tears from my cheeks. The roof was lit up by the moon. There was nothing here. There was no one here. Of course, there was no sign of Serika or Nono's body. And what was that?
落ち着け。落ち着くんだ。
It was all mind control. All just a hallucination. It was a fake vision that Sakuma had created. That's right. It was just like a movie. It had to be. Oh, this is no movie. Nono died at Serika's hand. Serika had killed Nono. That had really happened. I'd seen it. But it wasn't happening now. It was all part of the past. There was no changing it.
何？のんちゃん、話って。
And yet, Sakuma is forcing Takuru to relive it again, and again, and again, it seems.
白々しいわね。あなたなら聞かなくてもわかるんでしょ、セリカ。
Again. The two of them were standing there, just as they were before.
わかっていたんだな、クルスノノ。ええ。なら、こうなることも分かっていただろう。タクルのことも殺すつもり？それはない。あいつのことは私が生かし続ける。それが私の存在理由だ。信じられないわ。だから私はあなたを止める。この命を使ってでも。そう言うと思った。 だからお前は邪魔なんだ。
The two of them played out the exact same scene as before. There was still no sign that they'd noticed me. My heart began to pound loudly again. I remembered how it felt to hold Nono's body in my hands. The smell of her blood and the way the warmth drained from her body. And the way her eyes would never look at me again. Calm down. I tried to tell myself that again and again. This was part of the past. Screaming wouldn't change it.
いや、そうじゃない。
Maybe this wasn't even part of the past. I hadn't heard this conversation. Everything the fact that Serika killed Nono might be a hallucination that my dad that Sakuma had created. No. I tried to run away, growing ever more frustrated at my unmoving legs. But nothing worked. That's right. The real me wasn't even here. I was on top of the stage, trapped in hallucination, with Sakuma and his gigantic D-sword standing right in front of me. The question is, can you break free of this delusion?
見込み違いだったな。お前の思考は丸見えだ。まだ私に友情を期待しているとはな。
Serika raised her D-sword and advanced. And once again this memory delusion plays itself out. And Takuru is still helpless. It was coming back. I never wanted to go through that again, but it was coming back. I looked away. No, I tried to look away, but my head wouldn't move. I couldn't take my eyes off it. Nono looked at me.
タクル、どうしてそこにいるの？
Well, that's different. Serika killed Nono again. And back here again. Back at the beginning once more. On the cold moonlit roof. I wrapped my arms around my body tightly, trying to warm myself against the freezing air, which is, the byproduct of a delusion. What was that? Nono had looked at me. I'd seen her looking at me. I was sure of it. She'd seen me? Or was it another manipulation on Sakuma's part? Trying to break our minds? No, that was impossible. I wasn't really here. But either way, something happened. That was Nono's voice I'd heard, and she'd been looking at me. If I were a real gigalomaniac, did that mean I had the power to change the past? Well, you'd certainly be a living phone wave real name TBA if you could do that. If that were true, was that the real Kurusu, not a hallucination? Of course, if you could change the past with your Gigolomaniac powers, that would actually put you on an even greater footing than that of even Takumi Nishijo himself. My head hurt, and I was losing the ability to think. No, this was an illusion. It was all an illusion. There was no way I could change the past.
何のんちゃん、話って。
Maybe it's Sakuma creating false hope to further break down our psyche.
あなたなら聞かなくてもわかるんでしょ、セリカ。
And yet again, the nightmare plays itself out. How many times now? On my third time seeing the exact same thing, I finally closed my eyes. Stop it. I don't want to see Nono die anymore. I put my hands over my ears to block out the sound, but I could hear them speaking the same words. The last conversation Nono would ever have flowed directly into my head.
見込み違いだったな。お前の思考は丸見えだ。
And so it goes.
まだ私に友情を期待しているとはな。私の中に友情など存在しない。
I didn't have to look to know what was happening. I knew the expressions on their faces. I knew the looks in their eyes. The angle that Serika held her D-sword at, and even how she was going to swing. I knew it all.
タクル、どうして助けてくれないの？
It's Steins Gate and Steins Gate 0 all over again. I felt warm blood splash on my face the second I closed my eyes. There was no time to even scream. I kept my eyes closed tight, but I could still feel the wind on my cheeks again. I was stuck frozen on that roof again. The muscles of my face had tensed up. There was nothing funny about what had happening, but I let out a noise that sounded like laughter. My teeth were chattering.
何？のんちゃん、話って。
I think we're past there being a point to this, Sakuma.
白々しいわね。あなたなら聞かなくてもわかるんでしょ、セリカ。
I covered my ears, but their words went right into my brain. I didn't know how I could possibly be any more confused. What was that? Why was Nono in front of me?
なぜ答えてくれないの？
This is a cruel joke even for you, Sakuma.
やめてくれ。
I didn't want to open my eyes. I wanted to keep them shut. But for some reason, the moment Nono was killed, they opened on their own. Nono kept dying in front of me. Nono had taken care of me and kept me safe, even before I woken up from my coma. From my perspective, that was before I'd even known her. She was a part of my family. She was the only big sister I had. And she had kept dying over and over.
なぜ 私が死ななければならないの？
And again. My head hurt, but the pain didn't even work as an anchor to keep my mind connected to reality. This Nono was a hallucination. I knew that. But the words she said were ripping apart my mind.
なぜユイを助けてくれなかったの？なぜ事件を追いかけたりしたの？
Nono looked at me and kept asking. Were those her last words before she was killed? Her dying screams? Her final message? No more. I don't want to see her die anymore. Please, stop it. Sadly, Sakuma is not predisposed towards mercy and kindness. My eyes were closed, but I could see her death repeated again and again in my mind. The D-sword running through her chest, the blood everywhere, the tiny sound coming out of her throat like air leaking from a bag. Her blood was hot when it landed on my face. It didn't have that metallic smell, but it was hot. I couldn't tell anymore. Was this really a hallucination? Maybe this was the real Nono, and maybe this is what she'd really thought. Why didn't you save me? Why didn't you save Yui? Why did you try to solve the case at all? I told you not to do anything dangerous. I told you not to get revenge. I think Takuru has reached his limit. Alright, Sakuma, you had your fun. I heard a sound somewhere. It was the sound of something snapping. I didn't want to see anymore. I didn't want to hear anymore. I didn't want to feel anymore. I closed off my mind, wanting nothing more than that.
おいおい、そこで殻に閉じこもるなよ。罪の意識だけで立ち止まるお前なんざ、もう見飽きてんだ。
I heard a voice from somewhere speaking directly into my head. But I held my hands over my ears anyway. I didn't want to hear anything.
しょうがねえな。なら、立ち止まれないようにするしかねえか。ウッドバーンヘロンは知ってるか？じゃあ、また1ヶ月後にな。楽しく壊れろよ。
And then, like a computer monitor being powered off, everything disappeared. What? What was this? It was dark. I couldn't see anything. I was in a huge, dark, empty space like nothing I'd ever experienced. I couldn't even tell if my eyes were open or not. I tried blinking, but the darkness didn't change. I tried to rub my eyes to see if that helped, but my hands wouldn't move. No, not just my hands. Nothing moved. Huh? There was no sensation of standing. There was no feeling of weight in my body. Was I lying down? No, was I floating? It was like being in zero gravity or floating in water with no resistance. Like my body was drifting along. The only thing that existed was the quiet. I could hear the sound of my heart echoing. But even in the overwhelming darkness, I felt a little better. Anything was better than seeing Nono die again and again. It didn't matter what. Compared to hearing Nono's last words over and over, I did nothing but float there. It was almost like being asleep, but there was something stopping me from falling asleep altogether. It felt weird and unpleasant. I tried at least to do something about the floating. There was nothing to grab onto, nowhere to stand, and my body wouldn't move. I wanted something solid. Well, we're definitely in the proverbial pickle yet again. He's frustrated over the fact that we weren't able to fuel his entertainment one way. Sakuma has decided to unleash a very different punishment upon Takuru Miyashiro. So when we return, adventurers, how the hell is Takuru going to break out of this one? As always, until next we meet.